pastels on. I'll be there with bells on, even if I know they don't ring.
Alright, welcome to The Lionhearted Presents The Storyteller Sessions. We're here technically with Zach and Sean, even though these are going to be two separate interviews. We're going to start with Sean. So Sean, you are Statehood Silver Medalist.
Yes.
What songs did you do for us in the Storyteller Sessions?
I did two songs. I did, the first one is called Sit and Wait, and the second one is called School Students Should Not Be Dying for Your Rights.
Which we will be getting to that loaded topic very shortly.
It's only a little loaded.
It's
mildly loaded.
It's a little on the nose.
So yeah, would you like to tell us about Sit and Wait?
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Sit and Wait is kind of a style of song that I haven't written too much before. Statehood is kind of taking a little bit of more of a nod from Kevin Devine than I used to, leaning into talking about politics, which is something that I am pretty passionate about, and doing it in a way that's very natural to me, which is kind of just kind of annoying, snarky kind of tone, which is something a couple of artists that I've listened to are really good at. So the song Sit and Wait is expressing an opinion where it's just like, well, everything is, all this stuff's happening, it's a ton of political activism, and like the political climate is incredibly turbulent and all this stuff. It's just like, but what can I do about it? I'll just sit here and wait for it to get worse so that then I'll really do something. Once it's bad enough, I'll get involved. Is a opinion that a lot of people, and myself sometimes, hold, and I think that's a terrible take. It's an awful, awful opinion. It's just like, oh, well, once it gets bad enough, it's like, it's bad enough. It's worth talking about now instead of kind of, waiting for things to get worse. So it's a very sarcastic song where it's just like, yeah, just wait. It'll be, wait for it to get terrible, then you can get involved. Then you can try and fix it.
So essentially trying to shed light on that very concept so that hopefully people that are feeling that way can kind of maybe learn.
Yeah, I'm guilt tripping other people as much as I'm guilt tripping myself, because I fall into the same thing a lot of the time. It's calling myself out as much as anybody else.
Is there anything specific that you think you've seen and had that kind of reaction towards that you can think of?
I mean, lots of issues. I've had people ask me why are you so passionate about the issue of ICE detention camps? And that's just a really weird question to me, because why would I not be mad about that? It's something where it's kind of this is the stuff to get mad about. This is the stuff that we've talked about is what we're gonna get mad about, and it's happening. And it's not just that. You have social, cultural, economic, all these different aspects of life and politics, which are unfortunately one and the same, where it's just these things that we're worried about in theory are happening in reality. Like noise pollution. These things are happening now. It's always weird to me when I encounter people, or when I feel myself kind of being oh, well, it's not that bad. It's maybe it's not that bad for me personally, but there's real things to be addressed. I probably rambled past that answer, but I think I got it.
Is there any something you can think of where you can think of something that you would do instead of sit and wait, like something you could try and work on changing, or any of us would be able to try and work on changing?
At the very least, vote. Vote. Actually know what you're voting for, and don't just pick someone because I think you should pick them, or because someone thinks you should pick them, but because they actually address things that you believe in. Don't be a single issue voter. Don't pick just one thing. Like, find somebody who's actually going to try and better the world in some way. And then, like, I understand the frustration with voting. It sometimes feels like you're kind of just screaming into the wind, but, like, at the very least do that. Be involved in political activism in some way, even if it's just conversationally, you know. Try and know what you're talking about to the extent that it's possible these days. There's so many things and there's so much information that, like, literally no one knows everything that's going on, and I don't expect that of myself or anybody, but it's like, you know, if you're gonna talk about something, make sure you've kind of read, and, I don't know, care,
educated.
Yeah, and, you know, above all else, care about other people. If that's not the basis of your views on pretty much anything, then it's probably a bad take. Care about other people.
And hence, if you go back and watch the video for it, The Village Idiot.
The Village Idiot, yeah, exactly.
Now, talking on stuff of that sort that I have a specific passion about, then we can go to the other song. I, as a teacher, very much cared about this song when I heard you put it out for the first time, and that's, like, why I wanted you to do this, because as a teacher, it, like, hit super close to home, because I've done many a Alice training and school shooter drill, and so it's, like, definitely something really close to home. But I guess there's not much of a story per se to tell, but, like, even in the sense of, like, so sometimes the story I've talked with others about, like, the story about, like, where were you, and, like, what was kind of the thing that made you go, like, you know what, I need to write a song about this.
Yeah. When we were on tour, we stopped in South Carolina? The beach we went to? Myrtle Beach,
South Carolina.
And I saw a row of American flags. They're all at half-mast, which inspired the first line of the song. Flags are always at half-mast these days, because it's kind of the idea. There's always something. And I also recognize that half-mast flags don't actually usually represent school shootings, I don't think, but they represent tragedy or bad things happening. But that kind of just had my mind going, and just this pattern of like school shootings particularly, or just public shootings that are, I wouldn't say indiscriminate. There are some of them now that are more politically and demographically targeting, which is even scarier. But the idea of just kind of indiscriminate is also scary in its own way. But the song is basically reframing the discussion about like gun control and violence in schools and like school shootings and things like that, where it's, when you frame the discussion around, okay, yeah, there's school shootings, but my Second Amendment.
Because that is a very key part of that song.
Yeah, it's a huge part of the song, and of how we talk about it, is people either try and dodge it and like, oh, don't politicize it. It's like, it's political, but it's also, it's framed as, you can't take away my rights. So I basically took that concept and framed it where it's like, all right, that means these kids are dying for your rights. Mm-hmm. And in American lingo and stuff, that's language typically reserved for soldiers. Yeah. The idea of the American soldier fighting to preserve the rights of the American people, or fighting for the rights of another country or another group.
And hence, pulling back the veil, the original title was
Child Soldiers, which was kind of rough. I mean, the real one's rough too, but it's saying that it's like, when you frame it that way and be like, when you frame the conversation that way, where it's like, like keeping my rights to own a gun or whatever, or against reasonable gun control, you're essentially saying these are acceptable casualties in defending the Constitution. Which, when you're talking about soldiers, is still messed up. There are a lot of soldiers who should still be alive because of wars that were fought for certain reasons, quote unquote. But this is, yeah, when you talk about it that way, it's kind of putting kids caught up in these tragedies as acceptable casualties, which is
Never okay.
never okay. Exactly. That's a horrible thing. And this is putting that out on the table and being like, yeah, look at it like this, and look how absurd this is. It's what is it? Yeah, you can't dodge a draft. You can't dodge a draft if you can't make it past 18. Is the idea of they're gonna make you serve your country one way or another. And if that's sending you off to a war that probably doesn't actually benefit anyone except someone making money off of it, or if they're saying, well, I make money off of the firearms industry, so kids dying in Parkland isn't my problem. It's laying that out and pointing out the absurdity and, frankly, the evil of what fuels that. And yeah, it makes me really mad.
Rightfully so.
But yeah,
we have Brandon Boers here with us, and I believe he's got a question.
Do these crises are they just in the realm of the United States, or do these songs represent other countries that are going through the similar issues?
I was definitely framing it within the context of the United States. This does happen in other countries sometimes, and I think the difference is, I think Australia was the one that was the most, or no, New Zealand?
I think it's Australia. New Zealand did have a
They had a church shooter.
yeah, they had a big shooting recently, but Australia
Australia had like one school shooting like almost 20 years ago, or like in the 90s.
Australia is the closest thing to comparable, I would say, on the world scale to the United States when it comes to issues like this.
But they had one thing, I think it was almost 15 years ago, and they acted, and it has not happened since. And it's kind of like, and like there was a shooting, I believe, in the 90s in Ireland, which was also part of like a border, like a civil war, although I don't know if it was directly connected. But like the problem is definitely worse here than it is anywhere else by a very wide margin. And the idea of opposing gun control to the extent and for the reasons that we do it here is definitely a United States thing. It's not exactly good. That's my hot take, yeah.
I'd say at the very least, listening to Statehood is at a good ratio, educational. maybe the one thing you can do instead of sitting and waiting is listening to Statehood Silver Medalist.
To like 1/6 of the songs I've ever made ever.
True. That's also very true.
Most of my stuff is not this political. This is kind of a new direction, but
it's interesting and it is educational and definitely value it. I don't know if Zach.
Shout out to anyone who actually finishes this video.
Yeah, seriously. Well, whoever has finished this video, where can we find the Statehood Silver Medalist?
On the internet. Spotify, Apple Music, whatever. It's statehoodsilvermedalist.bandcamp.com if you want to catch a URL. And on The Line, Facebook.
This is for a later season, technically, but the two of these boys are also in a band called Second Safety, which is what they were talking about tour earlier, and that's also a very great band, so find them. Cool.
Can't make it past 18. Hundreds of folded flags in classrooms, what